Yes, give me the world building. Give me a reason why I should care about this and why I should continue. Don't know what to tell you, the bridge is broke. Hi, my name is Christina. This is going to be what I read in August and September because I'm just starting my reading journey as an adult and I started late August, so it wasn't long enough for me to do an August list by itself. I read a large list of books because I really was trying to get back into it. We're just going to go through it one by one. So the first book I read was In the Forest of the Night by Amelia Atwater-Rhodes. Obviously this is a thrifted copy I bought a really long time ago as a kid. I read this physical copy that I own, and because it's so short, it was a super quick read. I could read it over a couple evenings, and I think it only took me like 2 or 3. For me, just getting back into reading, picking up a book, sitting down, going through the pages was pretty exciting. I haven't read it in so long that basically it was like reading it like new again, which is going to be true of most books I read, even if I reread them. I have pretty bad ADHD, and so I have not great memory. I remember some things, I'll remember the gist of something, or I'll remember it just wrong. So it's fun to reread books and rewatch movies because it's like I'm watching it for the first time. Or I will only remember the climax or the plot twist, potentially ruin it for myself. But it's always fun to revisit. This book is only 147 pages, so it was really easy to get into, being my first book as an adult. I really enjoy this author because she was published very, very young. Knowing that when I read it was very inspiring. It inspired me to start writing my own fiction. Essentially, this is a short novella. Came out in like early 1999, which was kind of the beginning of all of the vampire craze. We had lots of vampire movies in the 90s, and so that was carrying on to into the 2000s. I remember that's when like Blade came out. Underworld was shortly after that. There was Interview with a Vampire, a lot of that type of genre. Knowing a 13-year-old published a book at that time about something that was fantasy and something I was interested in was very inspiring. Obviously, being written by a 13-year-old, the writing and character depth reflect that. A lot of people are harsh on this series because of that, but being a young kid at the time, I remember just envying this as a whole. I don't remember being like, oh, that's not how people act. I remember being so impressed. Somebody close to my own age range wrote a whole book and that I was holding it in my hands. I remember thinking, I don't know if I'll ever have the guts to publish anything or let anybody ever read what I have written, but at least I have proof some of that stuff is accepted and exists. In addition to all of my reading, I would like to also get back into writing. Obviously, that will be at a casual, slow pace, and I will take you all along with me. Back to the book. The title of the book, In the Forest of the Night, comes from the poem William Blake's The Tiger. The poem, I think, is referenced in the front here. Let's see. Yeah. So it's called The Tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So that is the first stanza in the poem. It's very short. It's in the front here. That's kind of the inspiration for it. I don't think that was the working title when she wrote it, but somebody suggested it, and so that's what she went with. And it's been used in a lot of other cultural references. Off the top of my head, I know TV show The Mentalist. The summary for this book is that the main character is a vampire named Siska. She lives in the Northeast United States, so somewhere on the East Coast. I want to say Massachusetts, possibly the Boston area, but I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say maybe the town listed was Concord as where she sleeps. Because she's a vampire, she can travel pretty far. We don't know exactly at the beginning, but the chapters do flip-flop between the past and the present. The lore in this book really isn't explained up front. It's kind of explained as it comes up in circumstance, which is good for world building, but at the same time, it feels like sometimes there's like, oh yeah, there's this. Oh yeah, they can do that. At moments it feels OP or a quick write-in of, oh yeah, this is how we fix that. She has a friendship with a tiger. The chapters flip-flop between Rosiska's present day, which I think it just says present day. I don't think it lists a year. It just says now. So you can see it just says chapter 1, now. So that would be present day. Then when we flip-flop to the past, it'll say the chapter and then what year it was. I think it alternates pretty consistently. I don't think chapter 6 says 1701. This book is about her life, how her being a human and how she became a vampire affects what she does and how she behaves in her present day. Francisca is being bothered by another vampire who is older and is more powerful than her, and we get the backstory of this character named Aubrey in her 1701 years and how she became a vampire because he was there. Present day Aubrey is trying to expand their territory and challenge Francisca to show whether or not she's weak, and it all comes to a head in the climax of the book that they have a one-on-one fight. Because it was the early days of the YA vampire craze, in my opinion, that there's no romance in this book. It is just, this is who I am, this is what I do in my day-to-day. For a middle grade YA book, I think this is great. Let me know if you've ever heard of this book, if you've ever heard of this author, if you'd like to hear more about this series. I do own most of them, and I really enjoy this author. And I know that she's geared more towards children's books. She basically has this character just focus on the vendetta and revenge. There is no romance. It wraps up pretty well for a first book in the series. I know that's a big thing these days about how books need to have a beginning, a middle, and end, and sometimes it's just cut off. So I really enjoyed that. That is In the Forest of the Night. I picked up this second book, Demon in My View. It is the sequel to In the Forest of the Night. I started it in August, but I did not finish it until September. This is a physical copy. It was published the following year, so it came out May 2000. It has 192 pages. Because of the way this book is structured, you don't have to read In the Forest of the Night to read this one. They are in the same universe, but they are not sequels per se. There's even a little section in the back of this one to say, don't miss In the Forest of the Night, and make sure to go read it if you hadn't. This one is still that younger age group. Because this was published a year later, obviously it was published by a 14-year-old. The plot and character development is the way an adolescent would look at the world. We do have more world building. There are more paranormal entities involved. You start to see an expanded universe. It has witches in it in addition to the vampires and humans. While it's not necessarily a sequel, you could technically read this one first just because Aubrey is in it, and it might give more context of how Aubrey behaves in the Forest of the Night. I prefer to read things in published order. I know that may be a controversial stance, but I prefer to read things in published order so that I can kind of follow the author's thought process. This is about a human named Jessica. She is a high schooler that is also secretly a published author under an anonymous pen name. She has written a vampire story about a fictional character in her head named Aubrey, and she knows a whole bunch about his life. So this is the Easter egg that is kind of implied that she writes the first book in the Forest of the Night because she knows things that nobody else would know, even though she's supposedly human and is just a kid. But you don't need to know exactly what she wrote about to know what's going on in this story. She is a high schooler that is an outsider. She dresses in black. She frowns all the time. She kind of just like wards people off with her vibe. She's always in a mood to just be alone. She just wants to doodle in her notebook. No one wants to interact with her. She has very, very vivid dreams. It's what's driven her to be an author. She has these dreams that basically cause insomnia because she either dreams or has trouble reconciling with what she dreams about. So she knows all about vampires and other characters. She writes everything down in order to cope with it. We start the book with her going to school. She meets a couple of new kids that have transferred. One is Karen and the other is a boy named Alex. Karen is annoying to her, just another girl. Why are you talking to me? Nobody ever talks to me. Please go away. I don't want to talk to you. Alex looks exactly how Jessica thought Aubrey would look in her head, to the point that she just stares at him. That's Aubrey, but he says his name is Alex. And she has to then go through this little crisis of, is Aubrey real? Is she imagining it? Did she somehow bring Aubrey to life? Or is she just going nuts? Jessica has a ton of stories about witches and vampires in her head that she just can't fathom that any of those people or characters might be real, or that all of those events happened in real life. So on the flip side, things that go bump in the night feel betrayed because there's this book out there that has all of their secrets revealed, including their secret town and how to get there, what happened in some of these vampires' lives, like their secrets, what their weaknesses are, their vulnerabilities. All of the paranormal world is, who is this author and how can we find them? Because they feel betrayed. They feel like somebody in the paranormal world is writing about each other causing issues. They want to track down this person and get revenge. For coming out in the year 2000, this was a pretty good write. It delved more into the characters. There is some romance elements, clashing of clans, vampires versus humans versus witches. We start to see relationships start forming, a sense of morality. What would you do kind of thing in a certain situation. So this was a quick read as well. I enjoyed it for being a sequel, and I will continue in the series. I actually have the third book on my physical TBR list. So this is the books I would like to read next in whatever order I can get to them. For my third book, I borrowed a physical book from the library. It was called Beneath the Moon, Fairy Tales, Myths, and Divine Stories from Around the World by Yoshitani. I think I'm saying that right, Yoshitani. I don't have the book with me. It was published in September of 2020. It is a beautiful book. It's about 176 pages long. If you can get a physical copy, I highly recommend it. The artwork is absolutely beautiful. Even if you don't read it, just to look through it for the art might be worth your time. Very beautiful illustrations. They weren't labeled as such. It's not like the Little Red Riding Hood was about 6 of cups. It's an anthology of myths. There are 78 stories in total, and they each take up a single page. The left page is all art that goes along with the story on the right. All of them are a one-page story, period. That is a good thing and a bad thing. It covers a wide range of stories. So online, it says it has Sleeping Beauty from Italy, it is Rapunzel from Germany, Jack and the Beanstalk from England, Our Lady Guadalupe from Mexico, Sun God Ra from Egypt, the Crane Wife from Japan, and lots more. I enjoyed a lot of the native stories, the Inuit stories from both North and South Americas. I was interested in some of the African stories that I had never experienced. It was just interesting to see so many indigenous stories, how that they were more alike than they were different, despite being completely different parts of the world, completely different climates. At the core of humanity, we all kind of have the same values and like the same stories, because myths and fairy tales are trying to teach you a lesson, more or less. And it was just interesting to see the common themes across them, just really enjoying the stories in general. They had some inspiration for me because you could basically pick a story and say, how could I expand this? This could be an interesting writing prompt. So that was all the pros. So the con to that is that because they're limited to one page, some of the stories were shortened or very condensed. I could tell that because there were a few stories that I had known, and there'd be whole sections where we just kind of skipped over. It shortened certain things, and then some stories it has to drag out just because there's not much info to them. Take it with a grain of salt. It has good and bad things about it. It's kind of more of the art and the illustrations with the stories as opposed to being a really intense, in-depth read. It's an okay book as a whole. Surely you'll come across at least one fairy tale that you've seen before, and maybe look into some of the culture and go more into each story in depth of the ones you haven't heard before. Because I heard some African ones that made me want to look up certain words and learn about those cultures. Like, I don't know much about the Hindi religion and culture or much of the African countries. So those stories I took some notes on, and maybe we'll do more research and then use those in writing prompts later, but we'll see. So book number 4, I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read the ebook version. The physical copy, first edition published, says it's 506 pages. The reason I picked this book is because it was on my local book club's pick for September. I felt like this was a good starter for me to get into an actual book. Even though it was published back in 2011, I had never heard of it. It seemed right up my alley. I love fantasy. At the time, I didn't know it, but it's more of magic realism in which it's just the normal world with some things added to it. Morgenstern's writing style is very much show, don't tell. And so we'll just see a character pick up a book and walk out with it. Instead of saying where he's going, what he's going to do with it, we just see him pick it up and walk out. We don't know the meaning of the book. We don't know where he's going, what he's doing with it, what his intentions are, until later when we find out, oh, that book ended up in XYZ place. And then you have to kind of put the pieces together in your mind yourself of what happened in between the pages, in between the words that were written. I enjoy that, but because there are POV changes, there are time skips, it can get confusing. This story as a whole is about a circus called Le Circus des Rêves. I don't speak French. So the Night Circus is about a circus, Le Cirque des Rêves. It just shows up wherever it decides to set up. They don't do any sort of PR or advertising. It happens so quickly, like they'll show up and it just pops up overnight and then says, we open at dusk. They have this level of mysticism and mystery because the tents just appear in the middle of the night. There's no like seeing them set up. There's no seeing how they show up to town. Doors don't open for the public until dusk and they close at dawn. So they are only open during the evening, which is why it's called the Night Circus. Everything is in black and white decoration and theme. The tents, the costumes, I think the concessions, desserts and things they pass out, everything is in black and white. The story follows two magicians. There's Celia and there's Marco. They are in a competition against one another, but because of the way Morgenstern writes the story, we don't know what they're competing for. We don't know how they score points, how a winner is declared. You spend a lot of the book kind of guessing, oh, I think this is how it's going to end, or I think this is what they're competing for, or this is how they're going to do it. Because it's so unknown, like unsaid, they lock into each other. They're so focused on their competitor that they actually end up falling in love with each other, which adds a layer of complication on the competition because the competition does not care. There has to be a winner declared. They are magically bound to it and cannot back out. Both of these people were committed to this as children, have no idea what they've signed up for. Basically, their mentor slash teacher who is teaching them their magic decided this for them, and that is part of the story, so I'm not going to spoil too much. It is written in such a particular way. I wonder out there if somewhere in the internet there exists a fan edit of this book where it is re-pieced together in chronological order. I wonder if that would read easier for some people. It is a tough read if you're not committed to reading it. I don't know though if a fan edit like that would take away from the ethereal feeling of the circus and how the author chooses to reveal some of the plot twists, if you can call that them, and how those get revealed so that by the end of the book you understand why certain things were brought up and why they were important, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. I truly feel like I need to reread this book so that I kind of get the gotcha moment. Kind of like the way Sixth Sense does a reveal. You feel like you have to go rewatch the whole movie and see how did I miss it. So I feel that way with the Night Circus. I don't know when I'll get a chance to reread it. It was a pretty big read for me to jump from like a 150 page book to 500 pages, but I truly did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. If I ever come across a copy of this book, I will purchase it. I would recommend it to anybody who is interested in fantasy or magic realism, wants that extra challenge of go reading through the show don't tell. For the 5th book I read in September, I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. So I had spent a few days watching BookTube and shorts, trying to look at what was popular right now, what was trending. I obviously didn't want to start with the most viral book. I feel like if things are overhyped, then I will be extra critical of it, lean towards not liking it. If everybody says this is the best book, I'll be like, why? Why do we love it so much? And some of that is just me being devil's advocate. There are a lot of popular books out there right now I might not get around to reading because they're so hyped. I would prefer to have low standards and wildly surprised and impressed than to be told this is the best book ever and be let down. That's just part of how I've always read. I actually tend to read based solely off the blurb and the cover, and I know that's not a great way to pick out books. It makes it more interesting and surprising when I find a good book, and sometimes you do have to deal with some of the mid books you find. So for Quicksilver, I actually listened to the audiobook while I read the ebook, and I hadn't done that yet with any of the books in my adult life. I did it a few times as a kid when I was trying to read some of the classics for school, just because they were so tough to read through, especially like Shakespeare. I think Homer. I think I did that with either the Iliad or the Odyssey. I picked the 3rd or 4th viral book. I read this book blindly, so I had seen it so many times. The cover looked interesting, and I knew nothing about it except for the little blurb that I had seen, that it was enemies to lovers and something about fairies or fae. Fairies are not my cup of tea, just because I'm not super knowledgeable of the Celtic background and the mythology of that. There's something about them tricking you into doing things for them, like if they host you at their home, do not eat or consume anything because then you owe them. It makes me think of Labyrinth, where he claims a baby, and all because of trickery of the wording of the agreement. So I knew nothing about this book going into it, except that it was a very hyped book and was told it was enemies to lovers. The story is about a woman named Ceres. She is a female thief who lives in a caste system kingdom that is in a permanent desert. Like, it is high noon 24/7, if I remember correctly. Because she's a thief, she's used to getting around and doing things nefariously. She gets too greedy one day and tries to steal a High Guard's gauntlet part of his armor. These High Guards are part of the Undying Queen's personal warriors, her own like secret service kind of thing. They're always patrolling the kingdom. Ares is taken prisoner into the castle. While fighting to the death, she accidentally opens this portal and she frees a fae named Kingfisher after touching a sword that he was transported out of. It's kind of vague at the time because you're from Ceres' point of view. She's a human. She's like, I don't know, I touched the sword and this guy appeared. As she's fighting to the death, she's convinced that he is death himself and is taking her to the afterlife. After waking up a very long time, I think it's 10 days later, she realizes that she's not dead, but she has been taken to a completely other place that in her mind does not exist. The Fae are like bad bedtime stories parents tell kids to get them to behave. She does not believe the Fae are real, that the place she's currently at now exists, or any of this is happening. Kingfisher, who saves her, is really just an awful jerk to her, and it's kind of ridiculous. Is just gruff and mean from the very start. And her first interaction with him is him being thrown in court of the king and being told that he's a criminal, that he's a terrible person, he does terrible things. There's some sort of war going on between the Fae and vampires. Where did vampires come from? Like, I picked this book because it was supposed to be about fairies and not vampires because I just read vampire books a couple books ago. I can't get away from it. I had no idea there were vampires when I started the story. That is just boggling to me that I managed to pick that. The story follows. The fairies keep losing the war to the vampires. To be honest, this book was a lot for me to go from a middle grade YA vampire book to go to a romantasy adult vampire book was like, whew. Opposite ends of the spectrum. There was so much F-bombs throughout this book. I don't know if that was just to prove it was an adult book or if everybody talks like that, but I feel like there were so many other words that could be used to convey some of those emotions. I'm all for cussing, but like, it got excessive. The F-bomb was kind of a filler word because it was used so much throughout the book. It didn't pull the punch the way you would hope or expect an F-bomb to bring to a scene. Kind of pulled me out of the story. Whenever I read, I get completely immersed into the story, into the world, as if it's a movie in my head. Very vivid, very graphic, lots of details. So every time there was an F-bomb, okay, the first few were fine. After a while, I was just like, okay, we couldn't come up with another word or we'd just move on. It's just a lot. She can manipulate a specific kind of silver metal nobody else can do in the world. This is an extinct skill across all realms. And Kingfisher, because he's a fairy or a fae, he tricks her into an oath that she does not realize the wording screws herself over until way later, which was, oh, that's the thing about fairies I know. That finally happened. And she's put in between a rock and a hard place because now she has to make a bunch of metal weapons for these fae before she's allowed to go back to her own world, to her own family and her people. She's convinced that now they're all in trouble because of what she did. She committed a crime, attacked the Queen's secret service, and then dipped out. She can't go back until she's done all these weapons and just found out, oh, it's not just some weapons. You've been in a war for who knows how long, and we don't know when we're gonna have enough metal to make those weapons, so I could be stuck here for years. Once again, Kingfisher is a royal a-hole. Being his personal blacksmith now, she keeps wanting to sleep with Kingfisher, even though he's a jerk to her and mistreats her. He mistreats her over and over. For me, that kind of pulled me out of the story because I was just like, this is a giant red flag. As a woman in my 30s, this is a giant red flag. I'm
sorry, we seem to be having some technical difficulties.
Obviously, it's a few days later. My kid's been through here and done a whirlwind, so I cleaned up everything the best I could. Hopefully everything's mostly in place. Please bear with me. I'm dealing with some seasonal allergies. Talking about Quicksilver. Interesting fact. I read a review online. I did not verify this myself, but apparently somebody took in their ebook and did the control find search function, looked up that there are 387 times the F-bomb is dropped in every form of it. So ing, id, etc. 387 times. So when I say the cussing lost its punch and just became like a filler word almost, this is what I mean. There is a time and a place for cussing to bring an impact to your words and your writing, unless that is part of that particular character's development. But it didn't feel like that because a lot of the characters cussed. So it didn't feel like a character flaw or attribute. It just felt like the author wanted to use the F-bomb a lot to show that this was an adult book. I did not like this book for the first 3/4 of it. I was committed to finishing it to see what the hype was all about. Why was this a viral book? Considered DNFing it at several points to keep this spoiler free. I won't go into it. Really did not like the female main character. Could not see what the attraction was to the love interest. He was just a jerk, like I said. I was determined to find out why the online community liked it so much, because I enjoy fantasy, I enjoy romance. The attraction between the female main character and the love interest just did not make any sense to me. He's absolutely terrible to her, like I said. He talks down to her, cusses at her, implies that she's like slutty or just a slave to her hormones, like all women are. He is obsessed or devoted to her secretly. Why do you like him? Like, yeah, there's the physical chemistry part, but we're just supposed to like him because as a reader, I don't know it yet, but they're fated, meant to be. And we're just supposed to accept that because it is. Just trust it, no questions asked. I ask questions a lot. I ask questions about all storytelling all the time, just to be devil's advocate sometimes, just so that I can understand why something's done that way, or to understand a motivation, or to learn about something new about a topic. Like, I'm absolutely the worst person to watch a movie with, because I will lean over every few seconds and be like, that wouldn't actually blow up like that, right? Or that's not how people behave. That's not what happens when you get stabbed. Like, I ask so many questions, and then I end up Googling and I end up deep diving into various things and complete tangents, and then we constantly are pausing the show or the movie to find out what's going on. Back to my main point. I did not understand the attraction, and it felt forced. Don't ask questions. There's not much evidence of him being a good person other than the people around him being like, oh yeah, he's a good person. But he's not demonstrating anything to show that. It just feels very bizarre. We're just supposed to ignore his actions that we actually see him do. Supposed to trust his fellow warriors, his servants, the people in the village he grew up in. Just be like, yeah, he's a good guy. Okay, but why is he a good guy? There's very little evidence shown or any sort of action or backstory about how or why he's a good guy. How he's behaving to the main character is not showing that whatsoever. It's kind of like, oh, she's falling in love with a bad boy. There's limits to that. The plot twist climax of this movie was finally when stuff started getting good, in my opinion. Up until the climax, it had very little world building. Like, yes, there was world building, but it was just that servants is that species, or they can do XYZ. There's not a lot of exposure for us to know about it, but at the same time, the climax of this book, info dumped so hard. Yes, give me the world building. Give me a reason why I should care about this and why I should continue. I personally feel that the plot twists and the climax of this book are the only redeeming parts of it. The world building finally gets interesting and then the book ends. Yes, I will be putting the next book on my TBR when it comes out. I haven't done any research on when that is or what it's called, but I will not be racing to the store to get it, and I don't think I would be purchasing Quicksilver to add to my library. For a very important part of my review, there is going to be a spoiler. So if you have not read this book and you would like to read it for yourself, please skip ahead. If you've already read it or just don't care to read it, do whatever you want. I was craving it. I was like, yes, give me the world building. Tell me why I should care about these characters and keep going. For there to be this secret family, it's not specified. They call each other brother and sister. We don't know. But for there to be a secret family of rulers over all the realms, that they're just controlling everything. And so, like, they're at war just because they had a sibling spat. It's giving, like, Greek pantheon, where the gods are just, like, in a tiff with each other, and then, like, ugh, go off to war, screw the consequences, or the mortals, like, are just pawns in this. While those rulers acted as villains, they were kind of flat characters in that way, but we finally learned that there's a human realm, there's a fairy realm, there's a vampire realm, and these rulers of each species are all siblings and controlling everything behind the scenes. So while they're supposedly at war with each other, they're just like, yeah, we're at war with each other, and they're sitting next to one another. So for that to happen, it's just crazy that the mortals are getting the short end of the stick. Where I think it falls flat is that these villain rulers are kind of one-dimensional villains. They kind of feel like caricatures. We don't receive a lot of backstory on how they're actually related, how they came to be rulers, why they've allowed this war to continue, what their end goals are. In the last few chapters of the book, they're still spatting with each other. They're like, oh brother, you insulted my dress 1,000 years ago, and so I closed all the portal doors. Oops. She's reopened them because of Ceres wants to get her back and is angry at what she did. They're just like, oh, I forgive you, and now let's torture the mortals. While at the same time, all of them are still mortals because it is the very, very last couple chapters. They are all forced to go into this magical maze that is designed to kill them. But Ceres, the human special blacksmith who can control this metal that has disappeared, she has the powers that can navigate through this maze that the people who made it did not account for, because no one's had this power for an eon. But I won't give the actual ending away of the book. The part where Ceres lacks out and goes into this other place and makes her final choice is just crazy. That's the part I was like, yes, this is a story I can get behind. Tell me about these characters and the gods. That is my review of Quicksilver. Number 6, The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. When I checked this out on Libby, I did not understand the giant commitment that this book is. I did not realize that it was 5 books in one. Online said that the original first edition was 815 pages. This was published back in 1996, but I was trying to read the ebook version. So all I saw was that it was a huge book. For me, right now, this is not the time for me to be undertaking this book, and I will definitely be revisiting it at a later date, but I soft DNF'd this for now. So that was number 6. Number 7, Beastly Beauty by Jennifer Donnelly. After dealing with Quicksilver and all of the cussing and the sex in that book, I wanted something lighter. So I found this YA. I think it's considered a middle grade book. Beauty and the Beast is my favorite fairy tale, so this was like a good palate cleanser, just like a feel-good comfort read. I previously read the other Beauty and the Beast book that this author wrote. I enjoyed that. I chose to read the physical copy. I checked it out from the library, so I've already turned it back in. I don't have it with me now. It was originally published last year in May of 2024, and it was 324 pages in its first edition. The summary of this novel is that it's essentially a gender-bent Beauty and the Beast. I wanted to see how she was going to take this tale and change it. I am intrigued by the gender-bent part of this, but while I kept being like, this is what's going to happen next, like knowing it was Beauty and the Beast, I had certain expectations, and I kept waiting to be surprised or like hoping for something new or see how she would change it. So I was interested to see how this would differ, and that's why I chose to pick it up. The cursed princess is the Beast. The Belle character now is a male named Beau. As much as you know the storyline of Beauty and the Beast and all its variations, this one brings a new twist to it. I would say this one's mostly follows the kind of Disney version, but there are so many changes because of the gender swap that I would almost say that's not even true. There is no like family father figure we're vying our lives for or trading our lives for. There's no grand library gesture that you would see in the Disney movie. I do feel like this was an interesting take. This book is about a princess named Arabella, and she loves architecture. There is a thief named Bo, whose gang happens upon the cursed castle late one evening night when they're running away from the sheriff, running through the woods, trying to get out of town and like get away from the cops. Bo is the slowpoke of the group who gets captured while everybody's trying to escape because the bridge going into the castle just completely crumbles and shatters underneath all of the effort and force of these horses running at like breakneck speed. There is a whole court of ladies in waiting for Princess Arabella, and I feel like they are an interesting addition to the story that previous editions or previous versions don't include. The other servants throughout the castle are also cursed, and they're kind of in this stuck place between a rock and the curse. They want to help him, but they can't disobey Arabella. They can't tell him anything what's going on. They can make hints, but Bo, being a guy, is kind of dense about the whole situation and physically can't leave because the bridge is now broken. There's no way for him to leave the premises to leave, even if they wanted to let him go. He spends a lot of time picking locks throughout the castle, trying to find different rooms, trying to find the secret tunnel out that most castles historically include when the like king needs to escape quietly and quickly. He does not understand that there is no secret tunnel.
Secret tunnel! Secret tunnel!
He insists there has to be some way out. We can't be trapped here. That's just not physically possible. Everyone's just like, don't know what to tell you, the bridge is broke. When he can't find what he's looking for, he does find a lot of other things. Every time he finds something new or is introduced to a new person or a new servant, it just makes him feel weirded out by the whole thing. He's just like, why are all these people acting like this? Why is nobody trying to do better or improve themselves? They all go about their day-to-day, just one giant Groundhog Day, knowing that they're cursed and can do nothing about it. Eventually, he does find out about the curse, but he handles it the way most guys do, if you know what I mean. He just wants to just be like, fine, I just want to leave, angry, without spoiling anything about this. There is a great moral to this book that I think this retelling includes that's not in original or in any other version of the story. I do think it's a really good book for kids who need to learn how to deal with big emotions. There's a big plot twist that has to do with emotions and how Arabella chooses to control her emotions. I feel like it was handled very well, but I also feel like there was so much focus on that part of it that other parts of the story fell maybe a little below par because of it. The tagline of this book is, what makes a girl beastly? Is it having too much ambition? Is it being too proud? Taking up too much space? Or is it just wanting something, anything, too badly? I really enjoyed this book. I would reread it if I was in the right mood, but I don't know that this is one I would purchase. Number 8, Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. This book was published back in March of 2019. The paper copy version said it is 451 pages. I chose to listen to the audiobook on Libby. The summary of this book, it is a YA magic realism story. The main character is a high schooler named Jack, who we meet him at a college campus. He did like a tour that day. We see him that evening at a college party. There's not much explanation about how he got there. So he meets a collegiate named Kate. They hit it off right away, start dating. There's a little bit of awkwardness between them because she is a college student and he's still in high school. After getting emotionally attached, seeing them go on a couple dates, Kate dies. That's not a spoiler. That is like included in the blurb. So there's no explanation for the magic system here. Kate dies and Jack is transported back in time to the moment he meets her. He essentially gets a do-over. Like, he's not sure how he got there, why he's there. He's like, oh, this is deja vu. I've already done this. It takes him several tries to start figuring out, oh, what should I do differently? He makes changes to try to save her life, and those changes really affect his other relationships in his life and everyone around him. He's got 2 best friends, one he had a crush on. So Jack is able to go back in time, make changes, and try to save her life. This really affects every other relationship he has with his parents, his friends around him. Everything gets affected by these changes that he tries to make. So he has 2 best friends that are dating, And his mom and dad are a loving couple who are like about to have their 40th or 50th anniversary dinner. There's just different plot points in the story that every time he makes a change, something gets affected and slowly gets worse with every change and every redo. So he's like, okay, well, this doesn't work. I'll change it at this point instead, up the ante and do a bigger change. Or I'll try and like go make a change earlier in the story, see what that does. And it gets to the point where his choices really, really affect the lives of those around him in a very bad way. This book felt like Groundhog Day, but the stakes were higher because he's trying to stop Kate from dying. It was really cute. It was like a rom-com with some magic realism involved. So there wasn't a lot of explanation. There was just kind of surface level, except what's going on, kind of Back to the Future-ish, Groundhog Day, that it just keeps redoing over and over. The plot was unexpected. There were points where, oh, this is taking a direction I was not prepared for. And it was refreshing for it. While I expected it to just be like a Hallmark high schooler rom-com, it wasn't as predictable as I thought. And for me, that's refreshing because I usually end up predicting things and it ruins a book for me. After having such a fantasy heavy month in September, I want to shift into other genres for October and spooky season. Halloween is my favorite time of year. Honestly, if we could have spooky season all year round, that'd be great. I am working on a TBR list. So my local book club is currently doing a crime thriller. I am also doing a buddy read with a family member of a Stephen King book that they picked out. So between the crime thriller and the Stephen King book, I'm hoping to take a shift in my reading. And another goal of mine is going to be adding in more nonfiction. I love learning. I enjoyed being a student without all the grades. I have 2 nonfictions on my TBR list. This is Tolkien in the 21st Century, and this one is The Nurture Revolution. I want to say, what is the tagline? The Nurture Revolution, grow your baby's brain and transform their mental health through the art of a nurtured parent. Because I am a new parent, I will occasionally pick up a parenting book or a health type book. So we will see how that goes. See if I can put this back together now. This is my physical TBR. Because I'm a mood reader, I don't know when I'm going to pick them up. Physical books tend to be easier for me to pick up because it's not being attached to a device, which I try not to be on a device in front of my child. That is just a personal choice. Let's get our bears put back in there. I also take my toddler to story time every week at the library, and we do check out books geared towards the board books and like the really simpler books. If anybody would be interested in seeing those books, let me know. Maybe just this is what we checked out this week, that type of thing. Also, let me know if you have any recommendations or any new genres or series I should check out. I am also interested in getting back into creative writing or maybe playing more board games because I haven't done that in a while. So any recommendations would be great. I will take all of them into consideration. Thank you for staying this long on this video and coming with me on my reading journey. Please like and subscribe to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye.